All right, quickly, let's take you straight to our second talking point. And we have some gentlemen here that are prepared to join us to ensure that we have a robust time on this segment. Well, from my immediate left, I have Comrade Obidi Emmanuel. He's the president of Noxin, Edo State chapter. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers.
All right. Sitting next to him is Emmanuel Okodoga. Emmanuel Okodoga is the executive director, former executive director, Edo State Internal Revenue. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Prince, and viewers, Merry Xmas in advance.
And of course, from my extreme left is a gentleman. He's been joining us via Zoom all the way from Lagos, Nigeria. But this morning, we are privileged to have him live in the studio with us in Benin City ITV. He's in person of Austin Adigwe.
Good morning, viewers. Thank you for having me, Prince. It's my pleasure.
All right, glad to have you, Austin Adigwe. Let's just start with you as an economic expert. Despite all the measures put in place by the government to ensure that inflation is being controlled, yet there's serious hike in goods and services in the country. When do you think the government is missing it?
Well, obviously, you know, solution to whatever issues you have must start from identifying the problem and also applying the right measures. In our own case, we are not driven by data. So even the figures that MBS is throwing up, you know, at times can be a bit misleading, and I will explain if there is time.
Please do, go ahead.
And then again, you find the regulatory body, okay, using the wrong prescription for the inflationary pressure in the country, because what we are actually facing is cost push inflation, not demand push inflation. So mopping up liquidity to curb that inflation was actually a wrong move. And I remember I was on this program sometime in May via Zoom, and I did mention that, you see, increasing the cost of credit with an escalating cost of production is only going to do what? Drive price, okay, upward further. As at that time, inflation was 17.76. As we speak now, 21. Inflation is what? 21.47. Okay, and that's the figure they give. I have very big problem with those figures, because if you look at food inflation, that is put at 24.47 or thereabouts, okay, that's food inflation. Comparing food inflation in November 2022 to 2021 gives you just an increase of 6.07%, which for me is misleading. Which food item in this country has not increased by at least minimum of 63%? Because you're aggregating. Let's take, for example, rice. Rice was sold at 30,000 naira last year. By this time, it's now selling for 45%. Sorry,
50,000.
43 to 50,000. That's over 53%. This is a staple food. Look at bread. Bread that was sold for 450 is now selling for 750. That's about 66%. Now, okay, let's look at palm oil. I'm just bringing out some of the at least staple food that we have. 25 keg of palm oil was sold for 13 to 15,000 in 2021. 2022 is selling for as high as 25,000. That's another 53% increase. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that there is no commodity in this country between 2021 and 2022 that has not gone up by at least 60%. So by the time you do your averaging, you aggregate, because I understand from the standpoint of National Bureau of Statistics, they sample 740 commodities, okay, and they have informants, I think about 10,500 informants that give them prices. The question is, what commodity in this country has actually dropped in price, that when you average, you have this 6.7% increase they're talking about? The real inflation in this country is above 50%. Let's not kid ourselves.
Okay, Austin, I'll come back to you. So, Emmanuel Okodoga, how can we now start resolving this issue?
All right. Daniel, I think it is imperative for us to lay foundation for this discourse, okay, which my brother, Mr. Austin, has done. Let me just put my perspective to it. Yes, inflation in economics, we tell you, is the rise in the general level of the prices of goods and services. In other words, they'll tell you inflation is when too much money is chasing few goods, okay? And again, looking at MBS, statistics from maybe MBS and CBN tell that the volume of the total money in circulation is 3.2 trillion naira, out of which you have 2.7 trillion outside the banking system, which invariably that tells you that we give a spike of inflation. Now, Nigeria is a net import. It's a net import. It's a net importer, okay, of food. Why am I saying that? 2021, we got statistics that the import of goods and services as a percentage of our GDP was put at 16.75%. Let's even assume that those figures are not correct, but let's just take it the way it is. And that the export of goods and services as a percentage of GDP was put at 8.3%. So you can tell for yourself that Nigeria is a net importer of food, all right? And that inevitably will bring about what? Inflation. Now, let me just go the other way. The problem we have in Nigerian inflation is more of a structural one than that of a monetary Keynesian economic theories. Okay? It's more of a structural problem, one arising from the fact that we're in a country where our marginal propensity to consume is so high. Do you get what I'm saying? A country where people consume, you don't produce. We have we are like a servant, but we have the appetite of a king. All right? So looking at all this, first and foremost, I think we need to look at the issue of wrong policies, okay, by the federal government, which I would say as a result of leadership failure. Okay. Everything starts with leadership. First and foremost, I think we need a new crop of leaders that will redefine a new model of accountable and transparent leadership. Okay,
we'll get back to you. Let's quickly come to Ogbedimana now. He made mention of something very striking, talking about a new crop of leadership. Do you think it's leadership problem we have?
Well, thank you very much. Very quickly, let me align myself with the last two speakers in terms of engaging the definitions of inflation and some of the causes. In a layman terms, like we'll talk to our people that they will understand. When you have too much money chasing very few goods in circulations, that is a major cause of inflation. Then, leadership issue. The fact is that everything rises and falls on leadership. As a matter of fact, as it is right now in the country, the current leadership has very limited ideas, innovations to engage the economy, strategies that can compete with other world economy. Therefore, you see that the contractions of world economy generally, even as it were that is supposed to be favoring Nigeria as a country, has become a negative or has become a very on a disadvantaged position in the country, Nigeria. So leadership issue and capacity is part of what is causing inflation in this country, Nigeria. Take for example, before sometime during the year, a state governor raised an alarm that the CBN was printing money, was injecting funds into circulation, into paying of salaries, into expenditure. We discovered that the federal government were borrowing money to pay salaries. It was happening in several months, And these things were not being told to Nigerians. And when monies are printed, and you inject money like that into the economy, and you inject it into expenditure, not capital expenditure, it amounts to too much monies in circulation, and you have a lot of money chasing very few goods. Remember why that was happening? We had issues of insecurity. We had issues of civil unrest in various and major parts of the country, like in the northeast, where the food of this country comes from majorly. Now, take for example, it is only in this country, Nigeria, we see that leadership, they make fish before they make water. Even in the scripture, you see God created the water before he made fish. When water was available, fish came and he has things to dwell with. But in Nigeria, while we were still not having sufficiency, take for example, let's take a commodity which is a major commodity in Nigeria, rice. We have not attained self-sufficiency. There is insecurity problem in the country where even local production of rice were dampened and being affected. The border was shut down. There was a policy to shut down importation of rice. And now the few ones that we have in the country, we now have too much money chasing just the few goods. Today, bag of rice is hitting almost 50,000 and above in this country. Ordinarily, that will tell you that the government policy, the ideas of government to engage a particular policy and the timing of those policies, is it good for us to stop importation? Yes, it's good for us to depend on self-dependent. But when? Okay. And what have you put in place? If you are not able to put some certain measures in place before you deploy certain policy, it becomes counterproductive. And that deals on the capacity and ideas of the government and those in powers to engage economic matters.
I'll come back to you. Osina Digwe. Okay, we wanted to share quickly.
You know, I talked about the issue of leadership here, and he equally supported that view. You see, let me tell you something. In this country, we need a leader. We need a new crop of leaders with capacity, with competence, with character, with commitment, new crop of leaders that are benevolent, new crop of leaders that are selfless, not self-seeking, parasitic leaders. Leaders that will be irrevocably committed to the task of nation building. Leaders that have a working knowledge of the economy. You can't give what you don't have. That's what we call it. Nemudat, no Habat, no Eris. You cannot give out what you don't have. If you don't have the knowledge, you can't give it out. So I think it is high time we begin to look at the selection process when it comes to leadership selection. That is key. And again, the issue of insecurity is one of the key drivers as touching, you know, I gave you an statistics concerning the imports of goods and services as a percentage of GDP in 2021 was just, I think, 16.3%, while that of export in 2021 was 8.3%. Okay. So, war-ravaged areas, what do you expect? Do you expect food production to increase? Of course, the answer is no. Food insecurity. So I think these are some of the issues we need to look at. That. There are other measures. Okay. Even the micro, let me say the Keynesian monetary policy measures, they are fantastic. I can give you 1001 monetary policy tools, range from open market operation, discount ratio, loan to deposit ratio, which the CBN are coming up with. Fantastic ideas, fantastic policies, but they're not working. But that's why I said the problem we have, the inflation problem in Nigeria is more or less a structural one, structural rigidities. Okay, so
let's quickly come to Osina Digwe. Now, as at when ASU were on strike, that same period, the federal government extended financial assistance to a country, a neighboring country. So do you think misplacement of priority is one of our problems?
Obviously, because your house cannot be on fire and you'll be busy chasing rats. Okay, so if you are not able to fund your own education for your own citizens, of course, education, you know, is the highest investment you can think of. So if you can't fund education, then why fund other nations? No matter the diplomatic gains that may come from that donation, it was actually wrong timing. If your universities are shut down, it simply means that you've also shut down the avenue for research and development. Most of all these problems that we have in this world were resolved by research done by several universities. Okay, so why would your own university be on strike for financial issues, which you are also telling us you don't actually have so much to pay, and at the same time you are extending the same financial assistance to other countries? Is sheer misplacement of priority.
Okay, Ogbede Emmanuel.
Yes, please.
Price of goods on the increase, minimum wage static. Are we progressing?
The fact is that the only thing that does not, excuse me, that does not grow in this country is salary. We know workers in this country have complained over time. You see a pump price of oil. Last year was about one something, and today, even the system cannot even control the pump price. This of oil. And you know the ripple effect of the pump price of oil. It affects goods and services, because the local man, the farmer produces somewhere in Northeast, will depend on the oil to transport these goods to the city, to the market, before the workers can buy. And if the price with which he is purchasing oil to bring his farm produce has increased, he has no choice than to inculcate those charges into what? The cost of transportation. And whether you like it or not, those who earn wages, monthly wages, even though their salaries, their take home cannot take them home, we have no choice than to do what? Than to also pay through their nose. And that is why we have a situation today where even a bag of rice is higher than minimum wage in this country, except in just one state. Now, if you also look at very quickly recently, the World Bank said inflation rate in Nigeria is about 21.7%, and over 5 million Nigerians from January 2021 to 2022 has entered into the poverty line. 5 million Nigerians. That is to tell you that, for example, for every genuine worker in this country who works and earns salary, there is no way that you can live like a normal human being with your salary in this country. So virtually major the low line income earners are into poverty lines. Why? Because we have salary stagnant, but we have cost of goods and services increasing by the day. Now, the governments of the day are not feeling the pulse of the people. And the major problem is because institutions are powerless. While we have very mighty individuals, strong individuals, but very weak institutions, persons who can call the CBN governors and threaten them to reverse policies, to change monetary policies. And many a times you have the leader, the president of this country so powerful that in his city, in his office, he can fire and hire even heads of institutions that are supposed to selflessly throw out policies that will determine and engage the system for the general good of every Nigerian. But when you have politics affecting institutions, when you have politics influencing decisions, or when institutions are supposed to be bringing out policies, but you have cabal developing policies for the system, that is what the effect, that is the effect that we are seeing today. Ordinarily, in a situation like in this country right now, The CBN, the federal government, the CBN doesn't control exchange rate. The parallel market control exchange rate in this country. Even if you say your exchange rate is 4 something, as it were now, how many genuine businessmen can access foreign exchange?
Okay.
When they want to bring in goods and services, they will also depend on the parallel market. Yet you say you are not recognizing their price, but they control exchange rate. They control everything that has to do with exchange rate. So we have institutions that are so weak. We have institutions that are tied to the apron strings of those in authority, and we have very insincere leadership.
Okay, let's quickly come to Okodo Emmanuel. I know you want to share his thought, but I have a question for you. Insecurity, banditry has been a major cause for lack of production in some areas of the country. What do you think the government should quickly do to arrest insecurity?
All right. There's a nexus between insecurity and food shortage, which invariably leads to high inflation. All right. So on that, I think the government should take the bull by the horn without caring whose horse is God, to tackling insecurity with a sense of commitment, with a sense of patriotic commitment. I think on that, I would say that is being done, but not to the level of expectation that is desired. That is on one side. When he was talking just now concerning the issue of, he talked about issue of institutions. I was just asking myself, I said, where did we get it wrong in this nation? And it occurs to me that the problem we have in this nation is like the case of the herd, the barber, and the clipper. When you ask me, what does that, it's an analogy. The herd, the barber, and the clipper.
How does it relate to our talking point?
If I, as the herd, or maybe I'm the person who wants to have his head cut, I go to you as the barber, and I'm ready. You, as the barber, you are not ready. The clipper is, you are ready, but the clipper is not functioning. 3, it's a tripod issue. Now, I'm ready, the clipper is ready, and the barber is not ready. That is a problem we have in this country. Okay. Now, let us even look at the issue of the borrowing aspect of it. As we speak today, the debt revenue profile, the debt profile is 41.6 trillion naira as at March 2022, with a debt servicing to revenue ratio of 180%. You know the implication of that? That is to say, as you are generating the revenue, okay, you are spending it. Now, the budget 2023 for the nation is about 23 trillion naira, isn't it? With a projected revenue of 9 trillion, leaving a deficit of about 10 trillion. Now, you have that to contend with, but you already have a debt profile of 41 trillion. So, as you get the money, the issue is what is the money that's been borrowed used for?
Okay.
Okay?
All right, let's, Osuna Adegwe, the Naira redesign, of what value is it going to make? And recently, the governor of Central Bank was twisted to change the policy of withdrawal to 500,000 and 5 million respectively.
Okay, I'm going to respond to that question, but let me just kind of react to some of
quickly
excellent remarks too of the panelists. Now, the first thing I need to state categorically is, yes, we have leadership problem, but Nigerians, we also have followership problem. Yeah. Whatever is going on in Nigeria today is because we refused over time to hold our leaders accountable. Everybody is so indifferent. For as long as you're comfortable, to some extent, you feel it doesn't concern you. It is only when you become inconvenienced by one thing or the other that we then sit up and talk about leadership. Leadership problem, that has been established. But the big elephant in the room is our citizenship responsibilities. How much are we holding these leaders to account? we are beginning to see that when people gather, because we hold the power, this power, they are holding it for us in trust. So Nigerians, stand up, hold these leaders accountable. Whoever occupies any elective office is holding that power in trust for you. Then I make bold to say that the problem we have, the inflationary problem, please, it's not much of leadership problem. It has not defied economic analysis, but what has happened is that we are not applying the right measures. I think I need to state it, because inflation could either be on the demand side. In that case, you're strictly talking about liquidity. And when you're mopping up liquidity, you begin to see, you know, some easing up of the inflationary gap. But when inflation is on the supply side, okay, such measures can no longer work. Now, what do I mean by inflation on the supply side, which is what we are facing today, is that production cost is escalating. What sane government or anybody in the monetary authorities, with even the fiscal authorities, is to work on how this cost of production can be reduced. And I'll give you, is very simple. For example, you are talking about subsidy on fuel, but there's no subsidy on diesel. Now, for you to transport fuel from Lagos to Kano, you need diesel, right? You need diesel. That is not subsidized. That is now going for 1,000 plus or thereabout. It makes nonsense of the whole exercise. Okay. Now, if government steps in and says, okay, fine, I'm going to pay attractive bridging costs to these marketers so that this product can get to all corners of this country at very reduced cost, the price of fuel will come down. So we are not just doing the right thing. Is it like the Honorable rightly mentioned, the case of insecurity, okay? Because in agricultural transactions, is often, it takes a gap for you to cultivate and harvest. Those that did not go to farm last year, we're going to experience the pains this year, not last year. The flood that just occurred, we're going to experience the impact next year. So as a nation, we must begin to prepare. Now, back to your question. Naira redesign, of course, is one of the monetary policy tools that monetary authorities will always deploy, you know, from time to time. Number one, to check black money in the system. Monies that are illegally acquired, okay, don't always go through the financial system for fear of being tracked. And even when they go through the financial system, they want to launder it so that it comes out looking like good money. So redesigning your currency frustrates black money in the system.
Okay, all right. Let's quickly take your final thought on the show, your final take, Emmanuel Kodula, very brief.
All right.
Thanks.
What I would just like to say to my viewers is that we all have responsibility to build a strong nation of our collective dream.
Okay.
And in doing that, we should be able to hold our leaders accountable through what I call the mandatory social accountability.
All right, thank you, Emmanuel.
Yes, just by way of rounding up, I think I would still like to maintain the fact that leadership problem is key as to what Nigeria is facing today. Take, for example, the diesel analysis my brother just talked about. Now, if, for example, we have a leader that is bent and focused in fixing our refineries and ensure that they are working, Nigeria is the only oil-producing country that is importing refined goods in OPEC. If we have our refineries working, for example, we will buy diesel for 1,000 naira. And if oil theft, to date, the federal government is yet to publish and make known those that have been discovered as those stealing our oils from the creeks and from the high sea. For over how many years? We have refused to publish their name and make them know. After the private security contract was given to the former Niger Delta warlord, Tom Polo, he made series of progress within how many days? But yet we've been paying generals for years, we've been paying Navy generals for years, and we've never gotten such.
All right, thank you.
So you cannot remove leadership from the general problem
I'm afraid, gentlemen, this is how far we could go. We would like to have this segment again subsequently on the show. Thank you, Austin Odigwe, for coming, Emmanuel Okoduga, and of course, Emmanuel Obidi for coming. Well, this will be wrapping up on the segments TMI. Up next is Business Rendezvous with Dennis Olfik. On behalf of our production crew, I am Ijeno Huno Sedibame Daniel. So in compliments of the season, have a blissful day ahead. Bye for now.